Greetings, YouTube. Today we'll be reviewing Karloff by Peter Underwood. Now, first of all, take a look at that cover. There we go. Take a look at that cover. That's a wonderfully blocked and shot dramatic pose by Karloff, done by a professional photographer. Okay? Now take a look at Peter Underwood. This is a somewhat amateurish, overly dramatic pose that tries to outdo the cover image. And in comparison, particularly in comparison to that cover, which was very well done, this is absurd. It would be absurd on its own, but then you can just turn the book over and look at a good photograph and see that this is very, very silly. This is a biography by Peter Underwood of Boris Karloff, and it's got an extensive filmography in the end, listing all the films and the people he was in with, and its little synopses and little simple notes. It has a discography of everything he ever recorded. It talks about his television work. And of course, it's just a straight-up biography. And one of the things I liked about the book is that it was not an example of a biographer who is a frustrated novelist. Peter Underwood is acting as a biographer here, and had the honor to spend time speaking to Karloff himself, and many of his friends and colleagues. So you're getting snippets of conversations and little stories told by the people around Boris Karloff and Boris Karloff himself, or William Henry Pratt, which is the name he was born under in Britain. Because Karloff was English. I think I knew that on some level, particularly with the accent, but it just, I don't know, it just didn't like click in my skull. There's a certain vocal vibe about a number of the actors from the era that Karloff was from that kind of seems to transcend where they were born, what language, where they were imprinted with their language. It's like they almost develop. It's like the way pilots always seem like a southern twang, regardless of where pilots are from. It's something they adopt for their job. In that same regard, I guess I always just considered Karloff as a great actor. And of course, the role that he is most famously for is the role of Frankenstein's monster. Because remember, the monster in the film has no name. Let me whip up a picture of Frankenstein if I can. Yes, I can. Because you know they did include this one in here. There we go. There's the classic that made Boris Karloff a name known throughout the world. Now, he chose Boris Karloff as a name. Karloff, in particular, came from his family. I guess it was related to his mother's side. So there is some kind of genealogical connection to Karloff. But Boris, he just literally pulled out of the air because he thought it was a good name that fit with Karloff. He was about to sign something, it was work-related, and he was like, well, besides his legal name, but it was like he put his name, his working name, and he went Karloff, and he went Boris. And that was it. That was history. And it was a wonderful, wonderful decision because that name has become so linked with his roles as heavies, as thugs, as murderers. And the book is a lot of fun to read. It isn't what I would call deep. There are a lot of nitty-gritty here, folks. And if you ever had the opportunity to have someone write your biography, you want Peter Underwood to do it because this is a very graciously done biography. He's very kind to Boris Karloff, and there's no dirt in here. No one says a bad thing about Boris Karloff, and the most harsh criticism of Boris Karloff's career I think he ever says is that he comments about the fact that some of his Z-grade movies weren't the best because some of his Z-grade movies weren't the best. So this is not an expose in any way, shape, or form, but it is entertaining. I do question somewhat the historical accuracy of some of it, however, because the author misses an entire marriage. Boris Karloff was married 5 times. To the best of my recollection, he only directly mentions 3 of them, as in he got married at this time to this person. They were married for X number of years, that kind of thing. And I think he speaks about the 5th one just by referring to the wife as her first name. So it's like, so he's talking about one wife, and then the next chapter he's talking about another name, and doesn't seem to mention that there was a divorce, and so I get the impression that if Boris Karloff had lived in the modern era, he would have just had a string of girlfriends that he married because of social conventions. And because he was also a fairly traditional person in many regards. He was a gentleman in many regards. So I get the feeling that in a modern era, he might just have girlfriends and would have avoided the whole marriage thing. But he's been married. He was married 5 times. He only has 1 daughter, and I couldn't really find much about her. I don't know. She's a little older than me. I think about 10 years, 11 years older than I am. So I don't know where she'd be now. But the book is enjoyable. Even if it isn't deep, even if it isn't getting into the nitty-gritty of Boris Karloff's life. It covers his entire career. It talks with the people he worked with. They say nice things. You get interesting stories. For example, Arsenic and Old Lace, a film I talked about, I think not long ago on my channel. I'm not positive, but I know I saw it within the last year. There's a character in the film and the play that has had plastic surgery, and because of the plastic surgery, to disguise the fact that he's a murderer, he doesn't want people to notice who he is. Because of the surgery, he ends up looking like Boris Karloff, which is annoying because everyone thinks he's Boris Karloff, and he isn't. Well, isn't a great method of hiding who you are. Now, Boris Karloff played 1,400 shows on stage playing that character. So Boris Karloff is playing a character that keeps getting mistaken for being Boris Karloff. He was supposed to be in the film, but he had other obligations, and that is such a shame. I would have loved to have seen Boris Karloff playing a character who is always complaining about the fact that he looks like Boris Karloff. That's just so wonderful. So that's the one thing that made me smile from ear to ear when I read it in the book. It was great. Arsenic and Old Lace is a okay film. It's entertaining. I think you need to watch it if you want to have some background in film history. But the book was enjoyable. It was fun. It was nice learning more about Mr. Karloff. I might want to seek out a book that talks a little more in depth about him and his history, and maybe actually covers the fact that he had a wife that was completely missing from this book.